Witty Science Teacher. Today I'm going to show you everything that you can get in my Chemistry Hyperdoc Bundle in my Teachers Pay Teacher store. So I will break down each Hyperdoc and give you a preview of what resources are in it and what kind of questions are asked. So without further ado, let's go. So here is my Witty Science Teacher Pay Teacher store. So to get to my Hyperdoc Bundles, you're just going to scroll over here, and then Hyperdoc Bundles are right there. And then we're going to actually be looking at the Chemistry Bundle. So let's get that pulled up. So when you get the Chemistry Hyperdoc Bundle, this is what you get. You get a Google Doc that actually has a link to all of the chemistry hyperdocs that you will get. So you will get atoms, density, elements, molecules, compounds, and mixtures, pH hyperdoc, physical and chemical properties of matter, physical and chemical changes, the periodic table, the law of conservation of matter, and ionic and covalent bonds. This is one of my biggest bundle packages, and it's been a big hit, and it has great reviews. So let's break each one of these down and see what they contain. So the first one we're going to look at is the atoms. So the students will click this link to go to the Dr. Binocs What is an Atom video, and they will answer 7 questions about that. Then they will use Google Draw to create a model of an atom and label protons, neutrons, and electrons. The next section, they will identify which one of these represents a proton, which one represents a neutron, and which one represents an electron. Then there's a little check-in section here. What questions do you have about atoms? And then there's an extend section. So there's 2 questions they need to answer, and then if they finish early, here's a link that takes them to a PhET Colorado simulator where they can build an atom and play around with protons and neutrons, and it's a really cool one. So that is the atoms hyperdoc. So this is the density hyperdoc. They'll first go to YouTube and watch a video on density and learn a little bit of background information about what it is and answer these 4 questions. And then next they'll read an article on density and answer 5 questions there. Then they're going to get to go play this really cool simulator where they put different cubes of styrofoam, wood, ice, brick, aluminum in the water, and they can see the density and see how the different densities act when they're in water. And then they've got a question to answer. They have a question here to actually calculate density. And then there's a section for early finishers down at the bottom where if they finish early, they can use a link to watch Bill Nye and then just write some facts that they learn in the video. So this is the density hyperdoc. Here is the Meet the Elements hyperdoc. So this one's all about elements and kind of an intro to the periodic table and what's in an element box. So they're going to start out reading a Duxter's article and answering 5 questions about elements. So they'll kind of learn what atomic number is, what atomic mass is. Then there's a watch and listen. So they're going to go to YouTube and watch this song, The Elements, and answer these 4 questions. Then they're going to have to show how they identify an element box. So here it kind of teaches them, okay, this is what this means. Here's an atomic number, a symbol, a name, atomic mass. Now, can you identify carbon? Can you tell me where the element name is, the element symbol, so on, so that they kind of learn it and then they have to apply it here. How many elements are there? This is just the periodic table song where it goes through all the elements and it gives them a preview when it talks about the element of like something in the real world that is used with that element. So I really like this song. And then if you finish early, there's a link here to a simulator to build an atom. So they're going to click on the symbol and watch how the element box changes as they play around with it. And then list the elements and the symbols that you make in these boxes here. So this is just a hello, we're the elements. This is where you can find us in the world. This is what we are. It's really just a basic introduction to the elements just to kind of strike some curiosity and give a little bit of information to help them as they advance in chemistry. This is the Elements, Molecules, Compounds, and Mixtures hyperdoc. This one really just teaches the difference between an element, a molecule, a compound, and a mixture, and how they kind of build on each other and then how they're different. So the first one is a video about elements, molecules, and compounds. Then they'll read an article about molecules and compounds. And then the next one is going to be about separating mixtures. So here they're going to learn about solutions, solute, solvent, mixtures that can be separated, mixtures that can't be separated, and just different things with the mixtures. And then they're also going to have a simulator, which is really cool. I really love these simulators because it helps the students to be able to see, okay, I can mix this together, but then I can separate this out, or I can oversaturate it and learn about saturation and breaking apart mixtures. So this simulator is really cool. And then early finishers can play a Quizlet game and test what they've learned in the Hyperdoc. So this is the elements, molecules, compounds, and mixtures. This is the physical and chemical changes Hyperdoc. So this is going to teach them everything they need to know about an introduction to physical and chemical changes in chemistry. They'll start out with a YouTube video about physical and chemical changes. So both of those are covered in the video. And then they're going to read an article about physical changes. And then there's a little bit of chemical changes it touches on in there, but the article is really good for hitting on those physical changes. Then there's another video to watch. Again, that's another YouTube one. This one's real cool though because it shows chemical changes and chemical reactions, so it's fun. So you'll see things fizzing, producing gases. You'll see color changes and odors. So this hits on a lot of those chemical changes and what you need to look for when you're in chemistry. Then they put their knowledge to the test. So there's a list of situations. Glass breaking. Okay, is that a physical or chemical change, and why? So they can't just guess. They got to tell me why it is. And then for early finishers, they get to test their knowledge on physical and chemical changes with a Quizlet matching review game. So that is the physical and chemical changes. This is the physical and chemical properties of matter Hyperdoc. So this is an introduction to the physical and chemical properties. They'll start off with a YouTube video that will kind of just introduce them and teach them the basics of what they need to know about physical and chemical properties. You can see that right here, there's a list of things that will be covered. And so they're going to label each of these as physical and chemical. It asks them to pause the video and then check to see if they got them right. As they move throughout the Hyperdoc, the next one will be an article where they read about physical properties, and they're going to talk about metals, and they'll learn malleable, ductile, and brittle, and other properties of metals. And then they're going to identify boiling point, melting point, freezing point in those little situations. And then they're going to describe. So there's a picture of Guess Who here, teaching them that kind of when you describe physical properties of matter, it's kind of like playing Guess Who. So describe the physical properties of the rock, describe the physical properties of the feather, and then we get back into the chemical properties. So this one, if they're not doing stuff in the lab, it's really good to have videos here. So they're going to watch potassium and water and get a little excited about how that goes. And then they're going to read about chemical properties. So it kind of goes physical, chemical, and divides them up, which is really good to kind of just focus on one at a time. And then for early finishers, there is a link to a simulator where they can investigate. Okay, so you'll put the water and oil over the heat and then turn the heat up, and you're going to see which one boils first. And you can change out a lot of things. It's really interactive, so you can drag the water on the burner. You can put the thermometers in and out. You can add other substances to see if it makes it boil faster. So those simulators are really cool. So this is the physical and chemical properties of matter Hyperdoc. This Hyperdoc is all about pH. So this is really going to introduce the students to pH of substances and test them out, get some background knowledge, and then they'll play around with it. So the first one is a watch and listen. Of course, again, this goes to YouTube, and they'll answer 4 questions. And they're going to read about acids and bases in 2 articles. So they're going to read about it and answer these questions, and then they'll read this one and answer these questions. Then they're going to learn about pH indicators. How can we test for pH? What can we do? And then they're going to identify these pictures, what is being used. Okay, so let's just change that because that's not spelled right. So they'll look and say, okay, is that an acid or a base? Image 1, image 2, acid or base? So they'll answer those. Question 3 is just kind of a check-in. Do you have any questions or misunderstandings? That's for the teacher. When you go and grade this, you can look and see, okay, they're getting this, or, ooh, I need to check on that again. There's 3 explain it questions, and then there's an apply. So apply is where they go and use the simulator. They get to play around and put some stuff into a bucket, and then they drag the a test strip over it. They can test things like puke and coffee and water, and it's really fun because the kids just kind of get into the gross stuff like spit and puke and testing the pH of that. So it's engaging, and then they're also learning. So of course that's always a win-win when you can engage them and they have fun. So this is the All About pH Hyperdoc. This is the law of conservation of mass or matter. Either way, it can be worded both ways, and it kind of covers both of those. Hyperdoc, so they're going to start out with a read it on this one. So they're going to go get some background knowledge through an article and answer these 5 questions. And then they're going to go hop on over to YouTube and watch a video and answer 7 questions. And then there's another YouTube video to kind of break it down. She uses Legos, and she kind of breaks it down and uses some real world hands-on things to kind of show the law and how nothing can be destroyed, just rearranged. So I really like that second video too. Then they're going to try it in a simulator. If you've purchased some of my other Hyperdocs, especially for chemistry, I love these simulators because they really get the kids involved. So in this one, they're going to make sandwiches, and they're going to see with the sandwich, you see they add the cheese, the bread, the meat, and so you're balancing chemical equations with sandwiches. So, I mean, come on, what middle schooler or what student doesn't just love food? So let's balance some equations with sandwiches. Let's make it fun. Then you have a question. Do you have any questions or misunderstandings? This is just a check-in for the teachers. The students can write what they need, and then you can quickly go through as you're grading these or looking over them and say, okay, I need to pull that student aside, or, oh, I see this one, this popping up a lot. I need to go back over that. And then if you have any early finishers, they can play a Quizlet game. That's real fun. It's a matching game just to kind of expand on law of conservation of mass and just to stay on that topic even though they are finished. So this is the law of conservation of mass. This is the periodic table Hyperdoc. This is an introduction to the elements of the periodic table, the way that the periodic table is laid out in groups and families and metals and nonmetals and metalloids. So this is just an introduction to that. You can see that they learn about element boxes and how many make them up, how are the atoms listed, what direction do you read the periodic table. So it'll go over the atomic mass and atomic number so that students will see that that's actually organized in the periodic table too. And then they're going to read about one of the ways that they are grouped in metals, nonmetals, and metalloids, and talk about what are the properties, why are they grouped that way. They'll learn that. And then they're going to identify. So they will take this into a Google Draw, and then they'll color it. So you'll have your metals and nonmetals and metalloids colored a certain color, and then they're just going to, once they've finished it and labeled that periodic table, they'll insert it back on this side. So that was really fun. My students like this one when they've done it. Then you have 3 questions to answer about the periodic table, and we have symbols. So here on this little section here, it has the element name, and they are to give the element symbol here. And then for early finishers, there's a link to explore the periodic table. It's a really cool interactive periodic table where they can click on every element, and it'll tell them fun facts. It'll tell them just periodic table facts about that element, and then like, where can I find this in the real world? So they can just play around with that, get to know the periodic table. I like to use this one because my students do an element project. So this kind of gets them on that periodic table, learning about them and finding stuff that kind of sparks their interest. So when they do their project, they've already got some elements in mind that they actually are interested in. So they'll write their facts there. So this is the periodic table Hyperdoc. This is the Ionic and Covalent Bonds Hyperdoc. So they're going to start out with a Duxter's Read It article on chemical bonding, and they have 8 questions to answer. Then they're going to go over to YouTube and watch a video on covalent and ionic bonding, and they've got 11 questions to answer from that video. Then they're going to identify. So they have 2 images here, and they're going to tell me, is image 1 ionic or covalent? How do you know? You got to be able to explain it. And then they'll do the same for image 2. And then there's a little check-in. So at this point, once they've done those activities, do you still have any questions or misunderstandings about ionic and covalent bonds? And they'll write it in here. Again, that's just good. That's something for me to see how many students are struggling and what they're struggling with. They have 2 explain it questions to answer. And then you can either extend or just for early finishers, but there is a Bill Nye YouTube video that's a link to it for chemical reactions. And then as they're watching, they just write 5 facts that they learned from that video. So again, this is the Ionic and Covalent Bonds Hyperdoc. So that is my chemistry Hyperdoc bundle. I hope that you enjoyed this. Again, you can purchase that as a bundle on Teachers Pay Teachers, or you can just purchase the individual Hyperdocs. I will link to the bundle below, but that bundle also has a link to the individual one. So hopefully you can find something you need. If you have any questions or comments, drop those below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.